With Season 1 of Delicious in Dungeon wrapped and finished, anime-onlys like myself are in for an incredibly rough year of avoiding temptation to read ahead and binge all the manga. But there are still a ton of questions that I have for all of the cliffhangers and loose ends of Season 1 so far, and since I can't really look up anything without getting potentially spoiled, I'm just gonna yap about it in a video and hope you enjoy being along for the ride and hearing me speculate about a series that I'm presuming you all know the answers to. So here are my 7 biggest mysteries after Delicious in Dungeon Season 1. Number 1. The Prophecy. Yod's prophecy is an interesting piece of this overarching puzzle that is the plot of Dungeon Meshi. With a winged sword in hand, the hero who slays the Mad Mage will become king of the Golden Country. Or something like that, that's off the top of my head. And while this definitely seems to point to Laios and Kensuke, I'm beginning to have some serious suspicions about the validity of this whole prophecy business. Kensuke is starting to seem a little suspect. Not only was it a major key for the gargoyle door, but when Kensuke undergoes the mushroom transformation, we see a demonic blade inlaid with a skull and devil wings. And if you remember back to the Living Armor episode, the armor that Kensuke was taken from depicted a winged lion. Could this be some sort of foreshadowing warning us that the winged lion's true form too could be something just as evil and demonic masquerading its real appearance? Just like Kensuke itself? Not only that, but Laios doesn't seem to strike me as someone that would actually be interested in fulfilling this prophecy. He doesn't seem like someone that would get any joy out of killing somebody else. In fact, even when he imagines defeating the Mad Mage, he never actually kills Thistle, he only incapacitates him or bonks him on the head. It seems totally out of character that Laios would murder the Mad Mage, especially for a reward that, let's be honest, Laios doesn't even appear to want. Ruling the Golden Country, becoming its king, these are the furthest things from the goals that Laios actually has. So I'm not sure that he'd get any satisfaction of actually going through with his prophecy whatsoever. We'll have to see how all of this prophecy business plays out, but I have a feeling it's not going to be as cut and dry as you'd think. Number 2. The Toten bloodline. An intriguing little subplot that we've seen develop in the latter half of Delicious in Dungeon is Laios learning the basics of magic, something he seems oddly good at for someone who is such a novice. While we don't have any hard confirmation one way or the other, it certainly seemed like Laios' spell was the thing that de-petrified Marcel, and since then, Laios has been drawing circles and doing plenty of utilitarian magic to hone his burgeoning skills. Is Laios' path to becoming more proficient with magic going to play a major role in the rest of this story? And does Laios maybe have the same kind of natural aptitude towards magic as Fallon does? Marcel mentions something about the Toten's bloodline, explaining why Laios was able to grasp learning magic so quickly. Does this mean that whatever talent Totens have towards arcane arts is hereditary? Or was she just propping up her girl, Fallon? I don't know. And would this also mean that Laios sees ghosts not due to mana sickness, but in the same way that Fallon always has since awakening her latent magic potential? I'm curious to see what the upper limit of Laios' potential as a magic user could be. We've seen Fallon do some incredible acts of healing magic, so will Laios maybe learn to do the same? Or will he spec into a completely other style of magic that we haven't seen yet in the series? Paladin Laios confirmed? I don't know. And speaking about the Toten bloodline in general, we still know very little about where Laios and Fallon are from, what kind of family they were born into. We saw Laios' father briefly in a flashback, and we've also seen Laios' parents in Laios' nightmare, but we've never really had it explained just who they are, what they do, where they're from. Is Laios some kind of descendant of royalty? Is there an actual magic Toten bloodline? Going even further, does the region where Laios is actually from have a larger part in this story than we've been led to believe? Number 3. The Western Elves. The reveal of the Western Elves and their purpose in this world was something that shook the last leg of the season, but we still know very little about who they actually are or how they'll interact with the dungeon going forward. I don't even know their names yet. The leader of the Western Elves, the grim-looking captain with the strange eye and short ears, seemed to give Kabru, Shuro, and Namari the go-ahead to evacuate the early floors of the dungeon, but what then? I'm interested to know what their plans are. What were they really talking to the Island Lord about before Kabru and Shuro interrupted? What were the documents they were getting signed? And just from an anime fan standpoint, I'm excited to see what kind of fighting styles and magical abilities the elves might have, and if they're truly as fearsome in combat as they've been made out to be so far. Another thing is we're very unsure of the Western Elves' actual alignment in the grander scheme of this world. Although the captain and the scary white-haired lady whom I love seem intimidating, the rest of the Western Elves seem more or less like total goobers. From everything we know about them in-universe, it seems as though they directly oppose most of the characters' goals. But is that a bad thing? At the end of the day, they want to prevent the dungeon from becoming too dangerous, and even if you disagree with their methods, it's not exactly a totally selfish act. In episode 24, Laios and Senshi mention that they'd probably need one more party on top of everyone that they've met so far to fully consume Fallon's dragon half. Could that be the Western Elves? I predict the Western Elves having a bit of a face turn in Season 2 when they realize the nuance of the situation at hand, but it'll be interesting to see what ultimately makes them change their mind. Will it have something to do with their elven superiors outside of the island? I have no idea, but that's what makes them so compelling. Speaking of Fallon's dragon half, number 4, eggs. The shared futures of Fallon and Izutsumi is perhaps the single most important thing driving the plot for the main party. We've had this whole souls as eggs metaphor presented for a while now, but I'm curious about how the two will get their conditions reversed, if it's even possible. Will eating Fallon's dragon half actually work? I wonder if they'll continue this whole egg metaphor with some clever way to separate eggs from other mixed ingredients. Like, I wonder if it's something Senshi will randomly come up with on the fly, having this whole eureka realization, or if I'm just writing this whole script on an empty stomach. Souls are something that I've always suspected were going to be pivotal to the endgame of this story somehow, ever since the moment that a ghost told Fallon that his soul was bound to a ring that the elves gave him. It seems like the elves have a vested interest in this study of souls, from the ancient script in the dungeon to the ring, to the ancient arms race between elves and dwarves all those years ago. Are souls the missing ingredient to the larger picture of this story? How do souls being tied to bodies and being trapped inside a dungeon fit into all the other mysteries of this series so far? Number 5, the Mad Mage. In the Season 2 trailer, we get a preview of a single new scene from next season, and to say that talking it out with the Mad Mage seems to go poorly is a bit of an understatement. Thistle summons a dozen different types of dragons, saying something like, "If you want to eat dragons so bad, here you go, idiots," which means a couple things. It means that the party has told Thistle their plans to eat Fallon, and it also means for the first time Thistle is directly opposing the party. Thistle has kind of stopped them from quote-unquote stealing Delgal's property before, but it seems like Thistle is about ready and poised to become the prime antagonist of Season 2, in a way that he really wasn't in Season 1. There's a few interesting things about this scene though. It seems like they're outdoors or in some completely new biome of the dungeon that we haven't seen yet. So is this where the lift is taking them currently? It's also raining and storming in this part of the dungeon, which I guess isn't that weird because we just came from a snowy biome. There are different weather patterns in the dungeon, but maybe is this part of the Golden Country or someplace completely different? A place below the Golden Country? We'll just have to wait and find out. I really doubt that this is the final confrontation with Thistle because I believe some other key players like Fallon, Yod, maybe even the Winged Lion are totally missing from the fight, so it won't be the final one. We'll also just have to see what came directly before this, how much they actually revealed to Thistle here. Did Marcel ask him for help with what he knows about black magic? Did Laios tell him about the prophecy? Does he know that Delgal's dead at this point? Now that Thistle knows the plan, knows what the characters are doing, he can actively work against the party should he choose to do so, which spells a pretty dangerous second half of the story. We still don't know too much about Thistle or his motives yet, but if you'd like to see my extended theories and predictions on Thistle, you can check out my Mad Mage theory video and my Desires video for more of my ideas on where I think his character might be heading. Number 6, the Winged Lion. As of the end of Season 1, we still haven't seen the Winged Lion at all in the series so far. I thought for sure the final episode would have Laios, the supposed hero of prophecy, finally come into contact with the one who spoke the prophecy into existence in the first place. I was hoping this would happen to leave us with the intrigue of the prophecy and Laios' place in the story, but I'll do my best with what we have still. So, who is the Winged Lion really? Yod says that the Winged Lion is the deity of the Golden Country, but how can we be so sure that a country cursed to be immortal has a god with their best interest in mind? Looking back to the dungeon through the earlier episodes, we can see motifs of the Winged Lion on everything from statues to candle holders to fountains to even the sides of treasure coins, which would back up that the Winged Lion is some kind of god. Is he behind the creation of the entire dungeon itself? And if the Winged Lion did create the dungeon, why is it luring in adventurers with their deepest desires? Why is it gathering all these souls? Why is it creating monsters? Despite the party assuming that this god of the dungeon can aid them, we really have no idea if the Winged Lion is trustworthy or not, if it's benevolent or not. After all, it was the Winged Lion who told Delgal to leave the Golden Country directly. But why? It wasn't solely for Delgal because he knew Delgal would die. So was Delgal being manipulated by the Winged Lion this whole time? And then what could actually be the Winged Lion's motive for lying to Delgal? To get to Thistle? To know that Thistle's deepest desire after the loss of Delgal would drive the dungeon to insanity? The Winged Lion is maybe the most important remaining piece of this whole puzzle. If he is a benevolent god of this dungeon, he'll probably have more information to share with Laios about how to return the dungeon to its normal state. But if the Winged Lion is evil, and if he's been behind everything right from the start, maybe it's not the Mad Mage, but the Winged Lion itself that is truly the final boss of this series. And number 7, desires. Maybe the biggest plot twist of the entire series so far is desires. If the dungeon changes based on the desires and the dreams of those within it, that turns everything we thought we knew about this story on its head. Is the Golden Country even real? Or is a utopia where no one ever dies Thistle's deepest desire? Is a country that prospers eternally Delgal's desire? Knowing that the dungeon does this paints everything we've seen up until now in a completely different light. And how will it affect the rest of the story going forward? And what does the Winged Lion have to do with it? I actually wrote the script before I made my entirely separate Desires video, so you can check that out on 10 more minutes of me rambling about that in particular. That's all for today, guys. With Season 1 officially over, we have a ton of time to speculate because I will be avoiding any spoilers for Season 2 like the plague. If you want more Delicious in Dungeon content from the perspective of an anime only who is just theorizing about the series spoiler free, feel free to subscribe and hit the like. There's still a ton of things I'd like to discuss and analyze before Season 2's out, and something tells me we'll have plenty of time. I also stream reading Delicious in Dungeons manga here on YouTube every Thursday and Witch Hat Atelier live every Sunday. So if you'd like to see me read up to where the manga leaves off, subscribe and hit that notification button. It's been really entertaining to read the manga through the lens of having already finished Season 1 because there's so many things that I pick up on this time around, from certain lines of dialogue hitting in a completely different way, from really subtle clues of what comes next in the story. There's a ton to pick up on in the manga, and it's been really fun hanging out every Thursday with you guys. I also have a Patreon where you can get all of my videos early and extended. I don't have to worry about cutting things for YouTube. And you also unlock the entire backlog of my Delicious in Dungeon and Witch Hat Atelier reading streams, because I don't really want to keep them up just in case there's any copyright issues in the future, so they all live on my Patreon. It also just really helps support the channel and lets me keep on making these videos. It's always really appreciated, and a huge thank you to everyone that supports me. If you're an anime only, what's your biggest question that you have for Season 2? What's your biggest unanswered mystery that you hope they'll touch on? And manga readers, please don't spoil anything in the comments, but what were you thinking at this point in the story? Where did you want things to go? And with these as my questions and predictions, do you think I'll like Season 2? Leave a comment, all that fun stuff, and I will see you guys next time.